Alright everyone, welcome back to another Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes video with Fat Phil, and today we're going to be talking about Grand Arena and how I believe you can fix the system. Now, I want to give a huge shout out to my arch nemesis Egnards. He initially did one of these videos, I forget when it was, but it is linked down below. If you guys haven't seen that, go check it out. He brings up some really good stuff that I have decided I'm not going to cover in this video. I want you to go watch his stuff. I want you to, go watch that. As much as we might hate each other in regard to territory battle, there's still a lot of respect on the content that he puts out and the value of a lot of the things that he does. So shout out Egg. And I did ask him, we were thinking of originally doing this kind of as a live debate, and then I think he wanted to get his out and I just wasn't ready to kind of come up fully with my plan, and mine does not look nearly as pretty as his, but I think I've got some good points to bring up that would hopefully make Grand Arena better. So let's give a huge shout out to our channel members, as always, for their continued support. If you are ever interested, you know where that link is. It's down below, along with a link to Discord. Thank you guys again for keeping the faith, for, making the Fat family what it is. You guys are awesome. I really appreciate you. I can say my favorite part of my community is when somebody shares news from outside of Star Wars and the response that they get. That's my favorite part. So thank you guys again. Let's get in here. Let's talk about fixing Grand Arena. Alright, so what we're going to be doing is sharing a screen capture of kind of a Google Doc here that I created. And it's a 3-step process to fixing Grand Arena. I do not think it's a, hey, implement all of these things at once. I think it's a step process. I would go step by step, and I would probably do this over the course of, say, like 6 months, like 6 to 9 months. Give Capital Games some time to react to each change as it's implemented. I think if you tried to revamp the entire process at one time, a lot of things would break. So I would kind of take a tiered approach to fixing this game mode. So with that said, let's kind of open up the spreadsheet, and again, I will link it in the video description. So there's your Grand Arena board, right? Everybody loves the Grand Arena board, and the way that the first step you'd need to do is get more consistent with matchmaking. So here's a screenshot of 8 opponents that I am somewhere close to in GAC, right? I know the fat face is there, so I'm trying to get it a little bit. Come on, fat face. There we go. I think that should get you. Yeah. So you can see Hoots down here at the bottom, and then at the top, Cranky Pants. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I took this screenshot. There's more players that are within the skill bracket, but Psych Squatch from SPS, Sigma's there, so couldn't not take it and leave it here. But the current process for matchmaking is you are going to face 8 players from, there's a group of 8 players from your skill rating. So I could be placed with these 8 players right here. That's my bracket. Now, I am only going to fight 3 of them. And again, you can see that here kind of on the event. You've got round 1, 2, 3. You're only going to fight 3 of a potential 7 other players at your skill rating. And to me, this poses a big problem because it doesn't really give you a good sense of where your skill rating actually lies, because you're getting a small sample size, right? 3 is not enough. And because that's not enough, you could, if I'm, just go back to this screenshot for a second here. Whoops. That's the screen capture. Where the hell am I? Oh, yeah, that's right. Over here. So let's say that Psych Squatch is the best player of the bunch here. And let's say the second best is, call it Voorhees. Let's say I fight both of them over the course of the Grand Arena round. I've now taken 2 losses to the best player and the second best player. Well, let's just, for argument's sake, say that I'm the 3rd best player in that Grand Arena bracket. I'm only getting 1 win out of that. So now I've lost skill rating. I look like I'm the 5th to 7th best player, but I had to fight the 2 best. And, lost those matches. So now I drop down in skill rating, which again is what I was showing here. You drop down in skill rating, and then you're going to go win however many matches to make up for those drops, and then you're going to win a bunch and then go down, and win a bunch and, go down. It's this just really, really bad cycle. So what I would do instead is group you into a group of 10 players. You and 9 other players. And you're going to fight every single opponent once. Regardless of if you've won every single match or you've lost every single one, you are going to fight everybody one time. What this will allow is skill rating to flatten out a little bit. You're now going to fight more players at this skill rating and figure out, is Fat Phil really belonging at 3645? Or is he more of a 3500? Or is he a 3700? This way, you're going to get a more accurate view because you're going to fight more players who are considered to be an equal skill as you. So this is the first step, I think. Increase the sample size. And you don't, when you think about like why 10, you're like, Phil, that's a weird number. It's not. Remember, a Grand Arena season, right? When you look at a Grand Arena season here, and if I go to my GAC and you look at histories, a Grand Arena season is 9 events. If I'm placed into a bracket of 10 players, I'm one of 10 players, I can fight everybody once and I would get 9 total matches. So you don't need to adjust any of the, joining periods. You don't need to change the schedule. It's still 9 matches. And you could still do the whole, every week your roster resets for any changes that have happened. All of that can remain consistent. The rewards might have to change a little bit with your weekly stuff, but nothing astronomical. Your your losses, your season payouts, your daily payout, all of those things can remain consistent, with the only change being your weeklies might have to get tweaked a little bit to account for not really knowing who won the bracket or whatever until the very end. So there would have to be some sort of tweaking going on there. But I think what this would do is allow you to feel a lot better about your skill rating, right? I definitely believe that going into fighting more players at that skill rating will allow you to get a better idea of where you belong. That's the first step. That is the first step, because the problem with matchmaking is not skill rating. The skill rating system, the problem with matchmaking is that your skill rating, number one, is not an accurate representation because it's just going crazy. So once you're facing the same players consistently, we then need to adjust skill rating. Skill rating was initially based on your galactic power. When they changed Grand Arena, when they took crystals from Squad Arena, they moved them to Grand Arena, all of your, oops, I'm in the wrong freaking thing here, sorry. There we go. So now it's adjusting skill rating. When they initially changed from Squad Arena to Grand Arena crystals, what they did was lined you up based on your galactic power. If you were this, many million GP, you were this level and this level. And the idea was that you would be facing players who are the same GP, and then the rest of it from there has been determined on your wins and losses. So you win, you go up roughly 40 points. You lose, you go down roughly 40 points. There's also the squish. We can eliminate that with this whole system. You can eliminate the squish. There's no need for it. The big problem with the way that skill rating works right now is that on a win, right, if I go to my profile, on a win, I'm going to go up by, roughly 40 points. Anywhere from here it was 35, right? If I go up here, I won, I got 39. I lost 38. But it's not just that I gained and I lost 40 points, but my opponent did the opposite. So if I win my GAC, my opponent and I who were on the same skill rating are now separated by 80 points. Right? Do you understand that? That it's not a 40-point swing, it's an 80-point swing because they're losing while I'm gaining. And that happens regardless of if you lost on a tiebreaker, you won on the tiebreaker, you lost or won by a point, or you lost or won by 2,069. It does not matter. You are winning or losing that much skill rating. And I think that is broken because it's not actually a skill-based score then. Because, again, here's a great example. Who's a better football team? Somebody who loses to the Eagles like the Chiefs did where it was straight belt to ass, or a team who loses to the Eagles by a point? Take that into consideration. Now, again, arguments being made on, it was one day or whatever. You get the idea. That if you would get your ass kicked by somebody and I lose to them by a point, we both lost the exact same skill rating for that. It doesn't seem right. So what I would change it to is a maximum gain or loss of 40 points, just for the sake of argument. But if you only lose your Grand Arena by 20 points, your opponent will gain 20 points for the win, and you will lose 20 points on that loss. So because you kept it close, your skill rating is not going to be as negatively affected, right? Another example would be if you win by 11 points, your skill rating goes up by 11, and you, the person who lost, is going to lose 11 points. This way, there's a purpose to trying in Grand Arena. When you look at my history and you see some of my matches where, like, hey, Phil knows he's going to lose, or like if I just don't feel like trying that game, right? Like this one, I would have kept clearing. Like I would have done more. I just didn't feel like attacking ships. I was mathematically eliminated. Here I did one attack, whatever. Here, one attack. Like once I know that I'm going to lose, I don't really try. There's no purpose to continuing. You're not gaining a benefit there. I know not everybody's like that, but that's just the way that I operate. Once, like this guy here, it was the same thing. He's like, yeah, once I figured out I wasn't clearing, I just stopped. That's a problem because, there's no reason for me to go any harder. But if you told me, hey, you're not going to lose as many points for continuing to try, I'm going to try as hard as I can every single time. So adjusting skill rating would be the second thing. Now, where we've gotten to is this point where, all right, you are now getting a more consistent matchup. You're facing more people at your skill rating, and we've adjusted skill rating to recognize that winning or losing by a certain margin should not impact your, rating as much as others. The third fix I would implement, the third step, the final step, is GP gates. This is the final step, in my opinion. I think this is the one that would be the hardest to implement because of the current state of Grand Arena. I think this is the last one that I would do. What this is showing is, hey, you've got Carbonite 1 through 5, Bronzium, Chromium, Erodium, Kyber, all respectively 1 through 5. What I would do for every single one of these groupings is put hard stops at various galactic powers to say if you are XGP or above, you cannot fall any further than this level. So in Kyber, if you are 12 million galactic power or above, you are no longer allowed to fall below Kyber 5. And including that if you are 14 million or above, you are no longer allowed to fall out of Kyber 2. What this is trying to do, the goal with this process is to eliminate some of those matchups that many players are experiencing where they get someone who doesn't really like Grand Arena that much, so they fall into Erodium or Chromium. They get absolutely battered, and then that person in the next round just does one attack or doesn't really play. And so they keep themselves in this bracket where they don't really belong because they don't care enough about Grand Arena, but they're going to get the free rewards. I'm going to say, hey, once you get to a certain point, you are locked in here. So you can sit in Kyber 5 at 12 million galactic power, and if you don't feel like playing, that's okay, but you're going to go 0-9. You're not going to be paired up with somebody in Bronzium or Chromium just because you don't feel like playing that week. We're going to get rid of that. We're going to stop. We're going to start implementing these gates to keep the matchups more competitive in certain aspects. And again, I think, 14 million for Kyber 2, this is because of where the game is trending. There's a lot of players who have a lot of GP, and the difference between 12 and 14 is a pretty friggin' significant jump. So trying to, recognize that. In Erodium, it would be 7 million is the absolute, hey, if you're 7 million or above, you're not allowed out of Erodium anymore. And even getting into Erodium 2, if you are 10 million or above, you're not dropping any lower into here. In Chromium, it's 6 and 4. In Bronzium, it's 3 and 2. And then in Carbonite, notice that it's in Carbonite 4. That if you are 1 million galactic power or above, you are Carbonite 4 is the absolute floor, leaving Carbonite itself, Carbonite 5, leaving that to be for players who are just getting into GAC. And what that does is tries to, hey, you know what? Like, if you want to hold your account at 900,999 GP, whatever. You know, that if that's what's going to make you happy, go do it. But I think this would keep Carbonite 5 for newer accounts, lower levels, keep it competitive. And I think that happens at every single level here. And what you could do with these GP gates is make them fluid. So that way, you know, what 12 million GP is today is not going to be the same thing as it is in a year from now. Because, like, there is GP inflation. That is a literal thing. There's GP inflation. So you could go and adjust this by 50,000, 100,000, you know, whatever you want to make it every single month. Call it 50K per month or something. That you could make it, you could increase that over time. And you don't really have to tell people even what these gates are. You could just have them in your head. Now, people will probably be able to figure that out. But these gates are there to keep Grand Arena more competitive. Especially in some of these, like these areas I have in yellow. Especially in some of these areas where, like, you're trying to get into Kyber 2. You're trying to get into Kyber, you know, Kyber 1 or wherever. You want those to be competitive. And not that you don't want Kyber 2 and Kyber 5 and Erodium 5 and everywhere else to not be competitive. But you've got to draw a line somewhere and say, I don't want players below this GP within this range. And I think the ranges I chose here are a good starting point. And I think you would actually have a much better idea of where these ranges would lie if you adjusted these two things first. Because then you're going to get a better idea of just what a player with 3645 skill rating looks like with these things added in. Because you're going to get more matchups there. You're going to be able to determine who truthfully belongs, and then you can put these GP gates in place and potentially get a much better Grand Arena system. And that's the three changes I would make. I honestly don't think you need anything else. That trying to do anything more than that would alter the board. Like, I know a lot of players are sitting there saying, hey, you know, we should get more zones, and that's a whole nother conversation. This is about fixing the matchmaking. This is about making Grand Arena more competitive. Adding more zones, adding more teams, more fleets, or anything else, that's a whole nother issue entirely that I could cover in a different video of what should be allowed to happen on the GAC board and if we should add more teams. There's some arguments to be made there that you could do some more interesting things with the board, but I think trying to change that is a much greater task than not, because there's already a lot of time invested. Think about how much time you spend playing Grand Arena already, and if you don't like it, you've got to spend more. Or if you're already kind of like, oh my gosh, I can't do more, you know, GAC fill, I've had enough. I get it. So I don't know that expanding the board is the answer right now. I think the better thing to do is right the matchmaking ship, and then I think we can talk about some of the other changes to Grand Arena. But let me know your thoughts down below. Again, like, subscribe, comment. I've got my Public Enemy number 1's video linked down below, along with a link to his channel for all the shit that I'll talk on Egnard's. I think he's a great creator, and he's definitely somebody that I consider a friend. I can't thank him enough for even just helping me, you know, push myself in TB. And that's why it's at the end of the video, is that if you're still watching, you hear this part, and that most people don't. But no, I really appreciate that, and I think that, you know, I asked him for permission to even do this video in the first place since he had done it. So, again, a lot of respect, man. I love you, even though I won't say it at the beginning of the video so people think that this whole thing is just two people who absolutely hate each other's guts. But I love you guys. May the force be with you, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers, my friends.